Welcome back to the world of Splatoon 2, where we burned some bread, slashed up a samurai, and curb stomped a cube. Today in the Octo Valley, we head forth into the unknown land and take on any challenge that may come before us. Our next stop was this activity center looking place called Slimeskin Garrison. This place would fill any rock climbing desires one may have, but the only desire I had was getting our first zapfish. I dropped down on our first level and was given the hero slosher, and this place kinda looks like a dump to be honest. I made my way up to this rotating Tetris block where I was told that swimming would be the safest option. I also found this new enemy called an Octo stamp. This Minecraft boy made a mad dash for me and face planted trying to get me. Unfortunately, he had his back exposed, so I quickly erased him. I made my way up a geyser, crossed some more spinning blocks, weaponized some hot dogs, and grinded my way towards another new enemy. This guy was called an Octo commander and was fit with a minigun. They looked pretty similar to the snipers, only this time they had sunglasses and a beard. After a couple of dumps with the bucket, he was no more. I made my way up a rotating tower and was soon face to face with yet another new enemy. This guy was called an Octo Stomp DX and looked like a grown-up version of the Minecraft boys. I needed to find a key for this box and I had a feeling I knew exactly where it was. I was right, it was with the Minecraft adult who apparently was unsplattable, but I had to put that to the test myself. I got the key and then waited for my time to strike. Yeah, that didn't work. I'm out of here. I unlocked the box and flew off to the final stretch. I needed to cross the rotating bridge to get the zapfish, but it was being guarded by more bearded gunners. So of course, I took my time and didn't nonchalantly walk up and splat every last gunner I could find. Hasta la vista, baby. I got the zapfish and was out of there. I got to the next area and received the hero shot, and further beyond me was a new enemy called Octoballers. But if you ask me, it was such a wasted opportunity to call them Octoballers. I was told to avoid them, but as soon as I stopped one, the hunt was on. I took out a couple before I moved forward. This place was pretty much a big continuous bowling alley, and since the Octoboys took the role of the ball, that means I was left with being the pin. I snaked my way up and arrived to a more open looking place, although now I had gunners blocking my path as well. Fortunately, I had a good throwing arm and bombed them from afar. Next up was a pair of snipers who I managed to sneak up on. I flew off and arrived at another area where I carefully bobbed and weaved my way to the top and got to the launch pad. I climbed my way up and witnessed some giant bald bowlers. I quickly swam out of the way and tried to take them down, but my gun clearly wasn't up for it. Luckily there's a cannon that just so happened to be within my reach. At first it didn't seem like my cannon was even scathing it, but all that changed when I hit the windshield. I went hunting again before I moved on. The zapfish was just above the horizon, but the path before me was combined with moving blocks and unpredictable bowlers. Despite the odds, I made it to the top where a second zapfish was waiting. The next level brought us to space and I was given the hero charger. These flying boys popped up and reminded me what a bad sniper I was, and they let me know real well. I returned with fury and splattered them up real good. I then flew off and then had to make my way up a ramp. I got through it with ease and didn't leave any survivors. I then had to grind my way to the top of this tower and sniped off any Octoboys in my sights. I made it to the top and forgot to jump. Don't worry, I remembered that and made a very big leap of faith. Nailed it! I made it to the top once more, actually jumped off this time, and flew off to Sniper Central. This place was littered in snipers, which meant it was time to snipe or be sniped. Unfortunately for me, my gun didn't have the reach like my enemies did, so I had to get up close and personal to finish them off. After some careful navigation, I splattered the rest and flew off to the next area. This part was like a small minigame. The platform moved and enemies would start to drop down. My job was to kill them off before I got overwhelmed with enemy fire. The platform soon came to a halt, and right before my eyes was our third zapfish. I landed in our next level and unboxed a brand new weapon. This one is called the Hero Blaster. Although it only shoots out one shot per 5 seconds, it makes up for it with its explosion of ink. Look how it effortlessly cuts through boxes. Even enemy shields are no match against it. That aside, it was now time to play a game called Retrieve the Keys. For every launch pad here, there was a different route I had to go through in order to get the key. I started with the one on the left. This route was all about making things rotate. Here I had to splat up these cubes with ink switches on them in order to progress. I took out this running boy and the platform started to rise. I inked up the cube and found myself face to face with the hardest challenge yet: making a jump. This happened twice. I took things a bit more cautious and went around the back streets. It worked wonders. I then splatted a cube, which rotated another cube, which I also splatted. A path appeared before me and I climbed up to get my first key. I landed back at the boxes, opened one up, and proceeded to go to the first route again. I thought it was a different launch pad. I got back and this time jumped onto the correct launch pad and headed towards our second route. For this route, I had to fly around using these grappling hooks. I found an ink switch, which I had to splat in midair, but after a couple of tries and a death, I continued my way towards towards the key. I grabbed it and headed back to the boxes. I left for the third route, which was pretty straightforward, and I'm not lying, it was literally just a straight line. I splatted, rotated, splatted again, and got the key. I made it back, unlocked the final box, a tower rose up, and I made it to a colony of vacuums. I rode on them for a bit before grabbing the key, then rode the vacuums to the opposite side. I unlocked the box and flew towards victory. 4 sapfish acquired. It was once again time to take out some more octolings, and a side of snipers. But that wasn't important right now, because I'm like in an actual city right now, with highways, bridges, buildings, you name it. I immediately tried to bomb the freeway. Close enough. Fun was over and now it's time to get back to business. I started making my way down the tower, taking out octolings and collecting zapfish, but I soon had to take refuge from the snipers. I tried to sneak down and stay out of view, but that didn't work. The only thing out of view was this gap. I made it back to the same place and came up with a different plan. This time I threw a bomb to distract them, but then I followed the bomb, and that gap is still there by the way. This time I went a whole different route and found a rail which takes me straight behind enemy lines. Things went by pretty fast after that. I got some more zapfish, took out any remaining enemies with a cannon, totally spawn camped this guy, and victory bazaars. I descended onto the next level and got another new weapon. Appropriately named Hero Brella, this pump action umbrella allowed me to shield myself from harm's way. The umbrella part also flies off, making it a good way to move in on enemies. It was time to unlock some boxes, so I was on the hunt for some keys. My hunt led me towards these flutters and some propellers. Shooting the propellers lowered the platforms, making it possible to jump on top of the flutter, which I used to ride to the other side. The next flutter had the key, so I grabbed it and got out of there. I needed one more key, and after making my way through a horde of enemies, I made it to this invisible walkway. Using the umbrella, I inked up the platform until I knew what was going on. Look, I'm a flying squid! I got the key and headed out. I unlocked the 2 boxes and flew towards the final stretch. Once there, I used the propellers to move the platforms to my destination. I then splatted, raced, shielded, and made my way to the final zapfish. It was now time to rinse a boss. I arrived and was given the charger. This place looked like a plumber's nightmare with all the pipes running around everywhere. I jumped towards the arena where the party was about to start. The zapfish disappeared, which I didn't really care about. The real loss was the duck. I'll free you, brave soldier. Out of the light emerged the cleanest Octarian the world has ever seen. The Octo shower. The shower wasted no time and pulled out his sniper. That's a sentence I never knew I'd say. I raced to the top of the center tower and managed to pick off 2 of these flying boys. I then made a quick retreat to avoid the missiles. After a nice dodge, I managed to get the last one and outsprouted the tentacle. I sniped it up and it was time for round 2. He called in the squad, which has 4 boys instead of 3 now. I managed to take down 2 of the boys before he retreated. He backed off and charged at me with a downpour of ink, though I quickly returned the favor and shot down another flying boy. He was literally hanging on by a thread at this point, but that didn't stop him from pulling out a minigun, which, at a distance, isn't too much of a threat. I got the last boy and started doing some damage. It was now time for the final round to begin. He called in the squad, who looked more twitchy than usual, and also had a frickin' stingray, who, unlike me, actually knows how to use it. I tried to get a nice shot in, but failed because of the twitching. I then had to bail because of all the missiles. I did, however, manage to sneak a shot in from down below. After literally 5 minutes of running around, I shot down another boy. After some more running, I managed to get the last 2 guys, and it was time to shut down the shower. The squad didn't show up, and this man exploded in solitude. I grabbed her zapfish and headed out. I got access to her next area and flew off. I landed at a place called Cephalon HQ, which looked to be our final destination. This place was filled to the brim with purple Kool-Aid and had floating platforms all around it. There was also a giant hole in the center for some ominous reason. I uncovered the first entrance and jumped in. I landed and was handed the slosher and it was time to jump to it. I mean literally. This level had me thinking that I was in a platformer. The platforms were also moving around, which is kind of a bad thing, because getting the timing was sometimes a challenge. Or maybe it's me who's challenged. I took things slow and steady and made my way through with no problems. I then rode a wall, which led to more walls, flew off, climbed a cube, found a scroll, climbed up some more sponges, and flew to whatever was happening here. I didn't think about it too much and jumped straight in. Although looking back, I probably should have given it more thought. I managed to make my way through all the shifty platforms and took off. I landed, then inked up a switch, which rose to these upper platforms. Here I splatted some enemies just so I could solve my Rubik's Cube. I got a key for a box, which led me straight to our first zapfish. As soon as I landed in our next level, I knew exactly what I had to do. I got busy with collecting zapfish, gunning down octolings, and before I knew it, we got our second zapfish. I was given the dualies upon landing in our next level, and as soon as I saw what was in front of me, I knew what time it was. Grind time, baby! I rode past ink pillars and real pillars, then ended up next to some rolled up mats. One balloon was all it took to unravel the mats. I crossed the bridge and returned to the grind. It was time for some side-to-side action. Avoiding ink has never been this fun. I got to grind 3 times the side, then ended up at a cannon. I used it to prep the road ahead of me, though nothing could prepare me for a bonk on the head. I did my prep work once again and was off. I slowed down a bit, but then quickly sped up to the next stretch. I got more side-to-side action, but this time with segmented rails. I made it to this mat, which led me to more rails. It's like rail heaven up in here. I did an epic leap, then made it to jumping practice. Here I had to jump over these ink poles or duck when necessary. This rail ended where 3 more began. More triple-sided action could commence. I dodged when I had to, and even the snipers couldn't stop me from getting our 3rd zapfish. I got into the next level and was given another new weapon to try out. Waving it side to side, the hero brush would get rid of anything in my way. Similar to the roller, I could also paint trails of ink on the ground. The only downside here was the amount of ink you go through, so refilling was always on the back of my mind. I smashed some boxes, brushed some guys, and made it to this invisible path. It was pretty easy to navigate through because I was literally painting it into existence. I found the launch pad with no problems and was off. I then climbed a few walls, swept up some Octo boys, found a splashdown, and forgot what it did. I took them out the old-fashioned way and made it to this rail where I got to pop some balloons. I found a running boy and the chase for his life was on. He ran away to some more invisible platforms but foolishly left behind a trail of ink for me to follow. He led me straight to the box and gave me the key. The next part had some dash pads, but I think the Octo boys were using it more for stunts than anything. I jumped down and found something called a curling bomb launcher, which was hidden in one of these boxes. This allowed me to send countless bombs towards the enemies. If only real killing was this exciting. I took the rest out and flew towards the next stretch. Here I learned the importance of being patient, and that guns are superior to paintbrushes. I put my life lessons into action and got through with no problem. I then found a cube, inked a dude, found a splashdown, and made it to these floating vacuums, who also had funny hats on. I found another new thing called an ink storm. When I throw this bomb, it would create a giant cloud raining down ink onto the platform below. The rain took out everything in its path, so crossing was a cinch. I rode the vacuum to the other side and got our 4th zapfish. Upon landing, I was given a roller for our next level. It also looked like it was time to bowl again too. I quickly made my way up the lanes, flew off, and was now in a standoff against an Octo boy. I steamrolled him. I found another ink storm and used it as cover fire. It wasn't really that effective against the bowlers though. I made my way through the spinning platform, then flew off towards these acrobatic bowlers. I couldn't take them out the normal way, so I had to find something else instead. Turns out, geysers are a great substitute. I avoided the bowlers on my way up to the top and flew to the next area. It was time to bang a drum. Unfortunately, my roller couldn't shoot out ink, so I had to use it like an actual drumstick. I made my way up the drawers, all while avoiding these giant bowlers. Unfortunately, I got sideswiped by one. I made my way up successfully and grabbed our 5th zapfish. I dropped in and was given the minigun to commence our final level. My first task was to find a key for this box. I found it just a little ways away, then unlocked the box. I arrived at a stretch of moving platforms, but before I could reach it, I had to take down this box barrier that was in my way. I found an ink storm and let it soar. For me, on the other hand, I did the complete opposite and plummeted to my death. This time, I made sure to watch my footing. I made it to this giant door where I took out any guards and splatted up the ink switches. The doors opened, revealing a line of defense. I quickly outgunned them and unlocked the launch pad. I think it's safe to say that this level was all about moving platforms. I got to work splatting, climbing, ducking, avoiding, and climbed up this big wall. It was time to make some more noise, but instead of drawers, these drums moved the platforms that I had to hitch a ride onto. I also had to be wary of my surroundings, which I figured out after I died. I got to the fence this time around, and now it was time to ascend to the next stretch. It was pretty much the same as the first level, except with more obstacles in the way. It also flipped at the very end, which threw me for a loop. I made it to the top once again and grabbed our final zapfish. The giant hole opened up and out spun an entrance. But before I jumped in, I decided to do a little upgrading. I went with an upgrade to my tank and got a seeker bomb as well. In retrospect, I should have gotten the gun upgrade instead. You'll see why. I got back and jumped right in. It started spinning again and descended into the door below. I arrived and was given the hero shot to use. This place was a huge concert stadium filled with these octolings, so I knew the final showdown was about to commence. I leapt towards the arena where a familiar face was waiting for me. It was Callie, only this time she was decked out in Octarian fashion. She struck some poses and called in the DJ. It was none other than the squid sucker himself, Octavio. And look, he actually introduced himself this time. That's what I call character development. He told me that they remixed Callie's Brain, and they soon announced their first song. It was showtime. He came out the gates trying to fist me again, but I wasn't scared. Sort of. I knew that in order to get the beating on him, I had to return his fist toward him. He knew that too and delivered a spinning fist attack, which I couldn't bounce back. Then they started raining down bombs, which I had to make a run from, and this is where the gun upgrade would have been useful. The problem was the firing rate. It was so slow that I couldn't bounce the fist back before it hit me. I then died once more to his spinning fist as well. I eventually learned that the ink actually stays on his fist, so I didn't need to return fire all in one go. This was a big game changer for me, and I didn't have to risk my life any more than I had to. After another fist to the face, they unleashed a waterfall of ink across the stage, so I quickly got out of there. I soon learned that I could also ink the fists after they hit the ground as well, making things a lot easier. It launched back and Octavio flew out. I inked him up and sent him flying back into his floating thing. It was time for phase 2, and of course they had something new up their sleeves. They launched some pastry looking things toward me that exploded into small ink tornadoes. I think they were more of a distraction than a nuisance though. It wasn't long before they tried something new again, this time with bombs. The regular bombs were swapped out for some suction cup ones, and for some reason I thought I could spot them away. Despite all the crafty shenanigans, I still managed to knock down Octavio. He flew off and the third phase came upon us. Out of nowhere, Sheldon pulled up in a truck with Mari, who was wielding a sniper. She perfectly shot off Callie's sunglasses, which was Octavio's remixing device. With Callie down, Octavio was in full force, coming out with a drive-by punch. He then quickly started a downpour of spinning fists, bombs, and a tsunami of pastries. After a couple of more fists to the face, Octavio was down once more. I smacked him up the side of the head, and he returned to his machine thing. In the meantime, Callie's hypnosis was fizzling out, and she needed one more push to get her back on track. Of course, Mari helped her out by yelling out their motto. She jumped towards her freedom, and now the Squid Sisters were back in action. As for me, I got handed a new weapon called the Rainmaker. This thing looked like it could deliver some devastating blows, but in order to do that, I had to take the fight to the sky. I was soon grinding circles around this guy, jumping fists and bouncing them right back at him. Eventually his floating stadium ran out of juice and it was time to deliver the finisher. I smacked him with my gun. He spoke straight Australian, then soon exploded. Again. I ended up getting news that the Great Zapfish has returned, and some more news stating that Callie has officially been found. So, mission accomplished. I went back to check things out and haha, he's back in the snow globe. I guess on that note, our journey was over. And man, it feels way better finishing something in like one go rather than taking an 8-year break. I had a lot of fun playing through Octo Valley, and I'm pretty excited to see what other adventures I get to go on. And with that, I can say I've finished Splatoon 2. Well, sort of. There's an interesting looking subway that I want to check out.